Hi there, I am back in this spot, so you can probably guess that this is another serious video. And from the title, it's not clickbait, it very much is a serious video. If I come across shocked, confused, confusing, disjointed, uncomfortable, it is because I simply was pressured to make this video before I was ready to. So I do have several pages of notes typed so that I can kind of keep my thoughts in line as this story is long and complicated. And again, I'm not comfortable with it just yet. But this all kind of goes back to the video I posted last week and privated about a day and a half later. The video was called Cami's Story, Leaving Gabby Hanna's Fandom, the 911 Call, and the FBI, which was a video that got a ton of support from a lot of you guys. And I had to private a day and a half later with little explanation while I tried to figure out what I was going to do about this situation. However, a hate account or hate accounts was created to harass me and pressure me into telling this story, whether I was ready to or not. And they've done so by putting out several tweets telling me to talk about this story, but also in doing so, spreading lies and just defamatory statements about me, as well as some of my friends and fellow creators. Since I privated that video, I have gotten continual support from a lot of you for me and for Cami as well. And I personally cannot just sit with the discomfort of knowing that so many of you are wondering how she's doing, and I have wanted to figure out how to tell you guys about this and in what time. And now with this hate account spreading misinformation and just terror and wonder across the internet or around me and this situation, it has caused more rumblings and more people are confused and curious as to what's going on. So I am here to, I hate to say, give that person what they want, but really give you guys what you probably are looking for, which is just some answers, what's going on. And for what it's worth, I do believe that I know definitively who this person is, and I will tell you towards the end of the video how I came to find out who this person is. And though I do feel very firmly that I have hard proof as to who this person is, I will not be sharing their identity publicly. In fact, every person I name in this video is either a public figure or someone who has given me express consent to use their name, and that includes Cami. Because this person has not given me any sort of admission of guilt, confession, or anything like that, and obviously no permission to use her name, I have decided to just grant a courtesy this person doesn't deserve and keep that to myself, and to share that information with our mutual contacts. If anybody reaches out to me because they have concern that they have an issue with this person, I will go ahead and share what information I have, but I'm not going to be saying this publicly in a video or my socials or anything like that. And I'll be honest with you guys, this is mortifying in many ways. This is clearly, if you've been following any of this, or even if you just pay attention to just this video alone, you will find that this is continual fallout from the drama I had earlier this summer with Gabby Hanna, and then involvement with her fandom and people somehow attached to that fandom or linked to that fandom. And this is something that I very much hope to put behind me, all of this within the next couple of weeks. I do have concerns around this community, around certain behaviors, around experiences that I've had, that some of my friends and acquaintances have had. I will be talking on these things because those things are still valid. Just to give you a quick rundown of what I've been dealing with, what some of my friends have been dealing with since this all started. We have been harassed. We have been doxxed several times, a few of us. One of my friends, it's very widely known at this point, had a false rape allegation made against her, which may prevent her from being able to find a job, which she is currently trying to do in a very difficult market. These people have also contacted this friend's previous employer. And in addition to that, I have been held emotionally hostage by somebody who was claiming that they were in the process of killing themselves in the middle of a conversation with me, causing me to stop everything that I was doing to try to get this person help. And within hours, I found that this person never went to a hospital, did not seem to seek any sort of professional help that evening, that day. And in fact, within hours was back to trash talking me in people's DMs for, in my opinion, no reason. And I may talk about that in another video. I will likely talk about it on the Girlman's podcast if I don't. But in addition to that, now I have been elaborately conned, as well as the rest of my friends and a lot of you guys, and now extorted. And I realize that this sounds so dramatic, and in my opinion, it is. And it is not my life. It is not anything that has been common in my life. This has only come to be my new reality once becoming involved with this YouTuber I mentioned and everybody that I've met as a result of that drama. I am so grateful for some of the people that I've gotten close to during this time, but for other people, I did not realize that there was this level of dysfunction to this degree in the areas of the internet I was hanging out. So you're not going to see me on Twitter much anymore, if at all. And aside from the next couple of videos where I may talk on these subjects, I will be distancing myself from a lot of these people in these situations as much as I can. So just to give you guys a trigger warning, I made a list of all the things that you should be warned about, but the list goes on. But I have here that if you're sensitive to discussions of suicide, self-harm, seizures, harassment, death, abuse, or anything related to that, I mean, this video is just sensitive in nature. So if anything related to any of those topics makes you uncomfortable, please skip this video. And like I've said before, get a recap from a friend. It's not worth putting yourself in harm's way just to hear out a story. So last week I put out a video, like I mentioned, called Cami's Story, where I spoke with Cami at length about our involvement over the past 6 or 7 weeks or so as a result of her departure from Gabby Hanna's fandom, as well as some ensuing harassment and personal drama unrelated to that situation. So I will try to, as quickly as possible, give you guys a timeline of what happened, what I shared with you guys in that video that is now privated, as well as the details of what was going on outside of the online drama, and then kind of go back and talk to you guys about lies that were suspected, proven, otherwise admitted to, just really kind of everything that I found out. And then, of course, like I said, towards the end, talk about this new person that's come about and how I came to find out what's been going on around them. And to reiterate, although Cami and I are no longer on regular speaking terms, she has given me permission to share her name and this story and whatever details I need to share, because she has expressed to me that she understands this is the bed that she's made and now she's lying in it. And that even though there is another person involved pressuring me to tell this story, she understands that she put me in this situation just as much as anyone did. And so here we are. So a little over a month ago, after I had a brief involvement with Gabby Hanna, I posted a video online sharing my side of the story. And over the course of a couple of days was just kind of dealing with sorting that out and the initial fallout on Twitter. And after a couple of days was starting to feel like I was ready to put that behind me. And a young woman by the name of Cami reached out to me on Twitter in DMs to express that she was considering leaving the Gabby Hanna fandom, that she was feeling conflicted about some of the things that they felt they needed to support. Specifically, she told me that she was feeling conflicted about the way the fans were treating Jessie Smiles, given that she had experienced, and friends of hers had experienced, similar to Jesse's, she wanted my perspective on, I guess, how she should go about moving forward with or without this fandom. She told me that she had been a fan since 2013, that all of her social circle was pretty much wrapped up in this fandom, as she had just moved from out of state to where she lives now, that she'd gone through ending an engagement in that other state, and that all of her online friends are now, like I said, tied up in this fandom, and that if she walks away from the fandom, she walks away from all of those friends. And shortly after she started speaking to me, I started to see that she was being essentially shunned from this fandom. And as well, there was a hate account or several hate accounts created seemingly with the sole intent of harassing Cami with vile, terrible messages and graphic self-harm images. And this harassment was continuing. It was going on and on for weeks, really, until here recently when all of this kind of stopped. But after it had been going strong for a few days and so many people were vocal about how awful this hate account was being, a lot of people tried to bring it to the attention of Gabby Hanna to speak out against this behavior. This person who was spreading hate in the name of Gabby Hanna, in her defense, or so they said. At one point, the YouTuber Megan Ranks got involved. She tweeted publicly at Gabby Hanna, and then I believe spoke directly with her about how Gabby was not addressing this situation. And as far as I understand, Gabby got permission from Cami through Megan to directly reach out to Cami and talk about the situation, see if maybe... I don't know. I don't know what Cami or Gabby was trying to get out of this situation, but they did, as far as I know, speak in DMs. I said this in the video, or we said this in the video that I posted last week, because Gabby had gone private or deactivated on Twitter. Those DMs were no longer accessible when we tried to take screenshots of them. So I don't have proof of those conversations. I do believe they happened just because Cami read those messages to me. She read them to my friend Amberin the night before. They are consistent with how Gabby was speaking on Discord. And of course, we know that Megan and Gabby spoke about Gabby speaking to Cami. So I do believe that conversation is real, although I'm not going to stand by any details and call anything factual that I haven't seen with my own two eyes. So while I've heard these messages read to me, I have not seen them. So that's something to keep in mind. Furthermore, that conversation, though frustrating in some ways, was pretty kind of lackluster. Gabby reached out to Cami, as far as I know, to acknowledge this hate account and these death threats and these pressures to kill herself and these images. As far as I know, Gabby told Cami more or less, these are trolls. This happens to me all the time. Just ignore it. Move on. They also had some sort of disagreement back and forth as to whether or not Gabby ever followed Cami, unfollowed Cami, etc. And then it just kind of seemed like it wasn't really going anywhere. I wasn't aware of this as it was happening. It was late at night. I was asleep. However, my friend Amberin, who is 3 hours behind me, was up with Cami as these conversations were happening. So she may be able to vouch a little bit more for how that conversation went. But where the situation got very serious for me was the next morning. I should note that since meeting Cami online, my sleep started to become very poor in quality. I was anxious a lot of the time, worrying over this young woman. I knew cognitively that I should not be expending all my energy on another person, especially somebody that I hardly knew. But at the same time, I couldn't just stop myself from feeling. So because I wasn't sleeping well, the next day after the conversation between Gabby and Cami, I offered to hop on a FaceTime call with Cami so that she could go over those messages with me. This was at around 8:30 on a Friday morning, if I'm not mistaken. I got on a call with Cami. She told me about what had happened the night before, and she proceeded to read me the DMs off of her computer while she was on FaceTime with me. And as she was about halfway through that conversation, I'd mentioned this in my video, I did minimize my FaceTime screen to pull up either Twitter or another app, and I could hear on the audio on the other end of the line that Cami started to make a very concerning sound. It sounded as if she was suffocating, which at first I didn't realize was happening. I just heard a strange sound and asked her if everything was okay. When she didn't respond, I went back into my FaceTime screen to find that I was no longer looking at her face, but from a side angle, I saw basically her knee and her hand shaking like this as she sounded like she was choking, suffocating, etc. On the other line. So depending on how close to me you've been during this time, you know that I went through the experience of, for one, just sheer panic and terror, thinking that I might be watching somebody die over FaceTime. Sorry, Oliver wanted to sit in my lap. I dealt with, the fear and panic that I was watching somebody potentially die. I didn't know if I should stay on the line and hope to see her come to, or if I should try to get medical attention, thank you, to her in a timely fashion, while just at the same time feeling completely defeated, because I thought I was hearing my new friend suffocate. And then the initial thought that hit me was that there is no way, considering I don't have her address, I just know the city she lives in, there's no way that I'll be able to get in touch with anybody who can find her in the next 5 minutes or so before she, may suffocate and die. So that was a very, very extremely difficult morning, where I did call 911. I did speak to a 911 dispatcher here in DC a couple of times. We did reach out to the police department in Cami's area. I did speak to an officer in that area that was able to ping her location based off of our phone calls. We did tell that part of the story in this video, but some of the details I left out were that I did speak to Cami on the phone as the EMTs were on their way to check her out. But as far as I understand, they did call her, and she told me that on their way there, they had ended up going to her old apartment complex or something like that, and were on their way to her new apartment complex. I just stayed on the line with her between calls to make sure that everything was okay, or if not, I would know about it. So as far as I understand, the EMTs showed up. Cami did go downstairs to where they were, and they did give her a cognitive test and take her blood. And I did see gauze on the inside of her elbow when she came back to her apartment and FaceTimed me. And from there, from what I understand, she spoke to her therapist about everything was going on. They determined it was an anxiety-induced seizure, and it was, according to Cami, her first ever seizure. And from there, I continued a friendship, but almost kind of like a big sister type of role in Cami's life, where I was there to kind of provide her support through some of these situations. I wanted to introduce her to some of my friends so that I was not the only source of support she had. So she did become somewhat close to Ambrin. I also have a group of friends that I'm now referring to as the Big Six, that includes me and Ambrin, as well as our friends Ashley, Bella, Griff, and Rain. So when speaking about my kind of close-knit group of online friends, I will just be referring to them as the Big Six for simplicity's sake. But we did befriend Cami so that she had a social circle online that she could turn to, talk through situations, create new friendships, and just kind of get through, which is kind of what we all been trying to do. Cami and I have both been in isolation throughout quarantine. And so I did book a visit for Cami to come visit me here, since we were both, especially her, but since we were both isolated and kind of struggling emotionally at times with the isolation. So she did visit me the weekend after the 4th of July. And during this time that we were forming this friendship, Cami did tell me some very personal details about her life, including the nature of her relationship with this ex-fiance out of state. I forgot to think of a name for him, so I'm just gonna call him Ben because I looked at a bunch of bananas. So we'll call him Ben. So she told me about this ex-fiance, Ben, and how extremely abusive this man was, physically and verbally. She also told me about how her family was kind of under the control and manipulation of this person as he was trying to get back together with her, kind of putting this idea in everybody's head that this was kind of somebody sent to her by God. That was kind of the rhetoric that was used around this situation, that Ben kept telling Cami that this was God's plan for them to be together, and that Ben would kind of plant this seed in the heads of her family members, and so that they were kind of feeding this rhetoric to her as well, while she was just trying to kind of stave off these pressures. And while I was aware of this person, Ben, and the relationships he had with Cami's family, I really started to see that ramp up a lot when she came to visit me. She did tell her family and she did tell him that she would be traveling to DC. However, once she'd arrived here, Ben supposedly traveled to where she and her family live to try to get back together with her. So upon her arrival here, everybody down there was really upset with her for daring leave when Ben was traveling there. I saw some text messages. I saw a text message from her mom. I kind of was actively engaged in another text message from Ben's friend. I was kind of just advising her to give people a warning if they were to be mean and disrespectful to her on the phone. Let them know that if this continues, she's going to have to block them, and then to follow through with that and block them. So she was doing a good bit of that. And then, either the mother or the ex-fiance would try to reach out via somebody else's phone. And this was just something that was going on the entire time she was visiting. So it was very stressful. It was very frustrating to not only watch the person who's visiting with me be harassed, but also to kind of be harassed by proxy. Some of the implications they were making about me were not kind. And I'll be honest, it got to a point where I started to wonder how much evil could surround one person, so one good person. How could there be so much abuse, so much manipulation, so much harassment, so many lies? But I did my best to kind of have a good time while she was here and help her through those situations, and kind of help navigate those text messages. And I heard mostly one side of a lot of phone calls until the end, and I'll get there. And during Cami's last day of her trip here, I did hear her have a conversation with Ben in which she told him very clearly, I guess for the first and last time, that she was not in love with him. She was never going to get back together with him, and it was over. At which point we recorded the video that I uploaded last week, and then we decided to go out and enjoy the rest of her trip here by kind of just seeing the sights in DC. And it was as we were getting ready to head to sleep late that night, so it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, Monday morning of that weekend, that Cami started receiving text messages from one of her family members saying that Ben had run out into oncoming traffic, that he'd been transported to the hospital, was placed in a medically induced coma, and was in very critical condition, that he had possible brain hemorrhaging, might have to go into emergency surgery. And at that point, Cami just kind of asked that this family member stopped sending updates and that she would just kind of catch up in the morning and see how things were. So I was the only person there to be there with her when she got this news. So obviously that was very difficult. I'm sure it would be difficult for anyone in that situation, and it was extremely difficult for me to witness. I've had my own traumas around death, around losing people that I love, and also I just recently met this person, so it's another thing to be there in such a dire situation with somebody that I've only recently met. But I felt that was my calling at that time, and I was there for her. The next morning, the update we got was that Ben was on life support, that his family was flying in from out of state to say goodbye, and once they were able to do so, essentially they would pull the plug on him. And that's what we dealt with. The last day she was here was really, I had to be the one to hold her and comfort her and be there for her while she got the news, but also while dealing with the blame she was receiving from people around him. According to her, her family, particularly her mother, blamed her for his death. His family blamed her for his death. And we would later find through a side note that he blamed her for his death. I worked with her to try to reach as many of her friends in her area as possible to see if anybody could be there for her when she flew back, because she was to fly back that afternoon. She could not find a single friend that would be there for her when she got there. However, one of my friends that lives in that area was so generous and opened up her home to Cami, even as a stranger. I did hear a couple of phone calls on speaker where Cami spoke to some friends in that area about Ben's death. I heard a couple of them talk to her about how this is not her fault, but they did pray with her over the phone. But again, nobody really offered to be there for her physically. A lot of them did pressure her to stay in DC and not go down there where all that mess was happening. And I did offer to allow her to extend her trip and stay with me if that's what she needed. Quite frankly, I wanted a break from this. I felt that I needed a break from this for my own sanity, but at the same time, if this were going to be a crucial element to her getting through this, I was going to offer my home to her for a little while longer if she needed to stay in DC. But eventually that day we ended up going to the airport. She ended up boarding a plane to head back home. After I gave her a million pep talks, cried with her a million times, and gave her a million hugs, like, what can you do? I did offer to set up a Google Hangout with the Big Six when she returned home, so that we could all kind of talk through the evening or the rest of the evening, and so she wouldn't feel alone when she got home. And we did have that conversation. My friends are fantastic. They were very present for her, kind of just sat there, offered advice where it was necessary, and otherwise just gave support. I also dealt with my own emotional struggle around this situation. I did have some guilt that perhaps if I had not booked this trip, that this man might still be alive. Other people kind of helped me to redirect that thinking, and I was told by several people that it seemed that whether it be divine intervention or what the universe would have you, I seemed to have been there for her to provide her kind of a safe haven when that situation went down, and that it was a good thing that she was separate from that situation by being here with me. So that night, the first night that she was back home, and after we'd had our Google Hangout, Cami FaceTimed Ambrin, and they read Ben's suicide note together, which apparently was a very difficult, emotional, and traumatizing experience for Ambrin, but of course she was going to do that to be there for Cami. And I read the note myself the next day, and it was riddled with abuse. Really, there was, I love you so much and you're incredible, but also you deserve this. This is your fault. You yourself to. It's a lot of that, like, please do this, like, meet me in heaven type of stuff. It was very disturbing, this note. So that morning that I read the note, the day after she returned home, Amber and I convinced Cami to burn this note on FaceTime so that she wouldn't be tempted to read it anymore. And she agreed to do so pretty quickly. And over the next couple of days, Cami continued to receive harassment from her family members, Ben's family, and like I said, some of their friends. People were, like I said before, kind of bypassing being blocked by using other people's phones. One of the things that horrified me was that Cami said she was receiving images of Ben's dead or dying body from her mother through one of her siblings' phones. She was receiving text messages from apparently like fake numbers from one of her siblings, one of his siblings. His family said that they would be pursuing charges against her for his death. Just a lot of really horrifying things that a person just simply is not equipped to deal with in the wake of a severe and traumatic death of a loved one. And at the same time, this hate account or accounts that arose after Cami left the Gabby Hanna fandom, this account or these accounts were continuing. They were continuing to harass her. And so the Big Six and I encouraged Cami to take legal action against really anybody she could. So she says she sent a cease and desist to her mother and didn't really hear from her after that. She spoke to a detective that questioned her about Ben's death and eventually cleared her. And at that time decided to go ahead and we encouraged that she either call the local FBI office or the police department to see if she could get some help with the accounts that were harassing her on Twitter that Twitter really wasn't doing anything about. Like I said, a few of us had been doxxed during that time, and we were filing reports either with police departments or online. So we wanted to set that example and encourage her to do the same. And so Cami did, according to what she told us, get in touch with an officer that agreed to help as much as he could, but didn't promise her that much would be able to be done about the situation, but that they would be putting in an emergency request for disclosure of this person's IP address or VPN provider through Twitter. And I gotta say, like, I was so proud. I was so proud of her for all the steps that she was taking to protect herself and take care of herself. And just about every day I told her how proud I was of her and continued to show my support for whatever she was going through at any given time. So the night that we posted the video on a live premiere, Cami's story, was last week on Wednesday, and it was very well received. It was a very nerve-wracking thing, not only for me, for Cami, but also, like I mentioned, the Big Six, kind of our friends around her. It was a nerve-wracking experience. So all of this has been a nerve-wracking experience for all of us, but it went well. It was so well received. Cami received so much support that it was kind of like a huge weight lifted off of all of us. And we were all kind of riding a high of knowing that this story was out, that hopefully something would be done, that we could look forward to seeing an end to this sort of harassment. And while we were all kind of enjoying the success of this story, a person who we assumed to be the person behind these hate accounts called Cami. At this point, I believe the officer had given Cami a location based on that disclosure from Twitter. They found that this person's VPN provider, and through that found their cell phone provider and a location, which pinged to Melbourne, Australia, which is a location we were kind of expecting might be where this person was located based on somebody else who'd been involved in the situation with another friend that we mentioned earlier, a different situation, but there was somebody in that location involved in another situation. So we thought this, could be the same person. More and more information started to come out that implied that it might not be that person. But either way, this person called Cami the night that her video was released. We also saw that person enter the live premiere chat, and we had to boot that person right away, hide any comments from that person on my channel. And so it was the next day that Cami told us she would be speaking to the police officer that was helping her to press for more action. So she did send our group a screenshot of an email. I may or may not show this here. I don't know how much it matters. I would have to censor a lot, but it was a very sophisticated email, I would say, in that it was a lot of information, a lot of helpful information from the police officer saying what he planned to do. Things like I said, this is the VPN provider, this is the location. We're going to be sending an officer in that person's jurisdiction to their home, either to talk to them, or if this is a minor, to speak to that person's parents or guardians, and that she would receive an update once that happened. So we did get an update once that happened from Officer Scott Reed. That's that's the officer that signed this email and was helping her with this case. Once an officer out in Australia visited this person's home, it was relayed to Cami that the person behind these accounts was in fact a minor, so she could not have the name of the person who was committing these acts, but was given this person's mother's name, and the mother's name was Sarah Claire. And so this was all last week, Thursday. I can't believe it's only been a week. Oh my goodness. Okay. So last week, Thursday, is when an officer was sent to this person's house. We were given this information, and most of us assumed this would just stop. And instead, this hate account went online to say something to the effect of, oh, so you're going to send the police to my house or FBI to my house or something like that. And they said something like, it doesn't matter. I told my parents that Cami deserves this, and so they're not mad at me. And a lot of us were continually terrified of what was going on, that there is not only this psycho out there that had it out for Cami and seemingly had no boundaries, and law enforcement wasn't going to stop this person, but a couple of us, like I said, had been doxxed, and there were crimes that were ongoing on the internet, and it was just very scary for a lot of us. Until the next morning, so Friday morning of last week, I received a text message from Jen Dent saying that a couple of girls that we knew just from being in common servers and things like that, that wanted to talk to me. They had some information they thought was important for me to know. So these girls, one of them is named Sarah. She's given me permission to say her name. And the other I'm going to call Christina, just because I see a picture of my friend Christina next to a picture of my brother Christopher. So Sarah and Christina wanted to talk to me about some information they'd come across. And so I did go into a group chat with them to find out what was going on. So they expressed to me that after they found out this person, this hate account person called Cami, they became very concerned and wanted to help. Sarah has a friend that is a police officer. She reached out to this friend to see if she could get some help to find out how perhaps we could get more information, or what more Cami can do to get help for herself against this account. That police officer, Sarah, shared everything she knew about the situation with that police officer, including the screenshot of the email from Officer Scott Reed in Cami's area. And the first thing she was told was that this email looked very suspicious. There was a lot missing from this email that would be typical in an email from a police officer. He pointed out that when he does send emails from his work email, they have the seal of the police department in the signature. There is a phone number to call that department back. And there's typically some sort of line of confidentiality that is towards the bottom of the email. And that email had none of this. Otherwise, it looked very legit. Like the language used, like I said, it was pretty sophisticated and complicated in the verbiage used and the information they found. Like I said, this email did contain not only a location, but a cell phone provider, which is a common cell phone provider in Australia. So at the time, there was every reason for us to believe that it was real, but here this officer is saying that actually this doesn't look real. So these two girls, Sarah and Christina, they proceeded to find out what more, as much as they could. They ran a search on this officer's name, Scott Reed, and they found that that is actually the name of a character from the show 13 Reasons Why, which started to look even more suspicious. They did call this police department in Cami's area, the one that is listed in the email, and asked if there was an officer, Scott Reed, and the police department did inform them that there is not an officer by that name within that police department. And that is when they reached out to me. And at this point, I started to speak to a few people, and I'm not going to say who brought forward what details, but a couple of details just started to come up and to shine a light on inconsistencies in this story throughout. For instance, one person pointed out that they noticed but did not want to say anything when I first met Cami because she already seemed to be going through so much, but her story didn't seem to line up in terms of her involvement with the Gabby Hanna fandom. She said that she'd been a fan since 2013 when Gabby didn't come on the scene until 2014. So that didn't seem consistent. I was also told that only days prior to when Cami reached out to me, she apparently joined Gabby's Patreon and Discord. At the time, Cami told me some people thought she was new to the Patreon and Discord because she was downgrading tiers. So people thought that as she entered these new tiers, she was new. Somebody else explained to me that there's no way that would happen because all that happens is that a person's role changes, but the members of that Discord would still recognize that person. And furthermore, Cami did post some sort of message that said something like, "Hey guys, I'm new here." So there was some confusion with a few people as to whether or not Cami was actually new to the fandom around, I think, mid-May. She hasn't admitted to being new. She said that she left and came back. I have no reason to believe that that's true. In fact, I have seen DMs as she gave me control of this Twitter account. I believe she was a member of Colleen Ballinger's fandom for some time and then left that fandom and joined the Gabby Hanna fandom for a short time and then left that and kind of latched onto me is what it looked like. Around this time, I thought that it might be a good idea to see if I can find anybody by the name of Sarah Claire, the mother of Cami's online bully. And I remember being on a call with two of my friends while I was searching this. And I remember thinking of the show 13 Reasons Why because of Officer Scott Reed, that being his name, or that being the name of a character on the show. But also I remembered that this hate account was making references to the show Pretty Little Liars. And I don't know anything about either of those shows except for the fact that they are like dramas for young people. But I remember as I was going to search this mother's name, I said to my friends, if this search brings up anybody from 13 Reasons Why or Pretty Little Liars, I'm going to be pissed. And I searched the name, and a few results down, there was a link and it said something like, Claire is friends with Sarah Harvey, Pretty Little Liars wiki fandom. So this started to look even worse to me. And that's when I decided that there was nothing else to do. Like, I could keep searching things and I could keep finding more reasons to believe or not believe Cami's story. But at that point, I had to just approach her. So I told her that, I told her that I searched the white pages in Melbourne, which a friend and I didn't find anybody by that name. So I told her that I searched her name, didn't find anybody by that name. I told her that in searching this mother's name, a Pretty Little Liars characters came up. I told her that Officer Scott Reed, in searching the name Scott Reed, a character from 13 Reasons Why came up. And I did tell her that I searched Ben's name, his mother's name, and his sister's name online and could find nothing. And we weren't able to find any sort of reports on the accident that led to his death. And at first, Cami played dumb. She didn't know what I was talking about and really kind of guilt tripped me for thinking that she might lie about any of this. Actually, she kept saying, "I can't believe you think I lied about everything." And I said, I don't. I never said that you lied about anything. I said, some of this isn't adding up. Please help me make sense of it. So to spare a lot of unnecessary details, a lot of this process has involved pulling details out like I'm pulling teeth. Cami offered to show me whatever proof I wanted that this police report, that this police officer, that all of that was real. And I remember her asking me what I needed to prove that it was real. And I remember kind of in a moment of just like bitterness and frustration, I said, since when do I have to tell a Gabby Hanna fan what proof looks like? Like, this is all you guys do all day is ask for proof, show proof of this, that, and the other. And there's a whole police officer out there and there's a whole police report on this situation. And you can't provide me any proof that this police report is there. You can't get a copy of this. And I hated that I was like the one giving ideas for how she could prove this to be true. And she said, well, I'll find it for you. I'll find something for you today. I promise I will. And then one thing that occurred to me, I said, why don't you just send me a screenshot of this email from this police officer with the email address expanded? So she did send me a screenshot, and with that email address expanded, it said scottreedgov@gmail.com. And that at that point, I kind of lost my temper. I said, are you kidding me? A Gmail account, a Gmail account. I'm supposed to believe anything you're saying when you're providing me a Gmail account. She had a bunch of stories as to why she played dumb. Like, why is it bad that this is a Gmail account? Is that wrong? Is that not okay? Okay, I never really called the police department. I actually called a harassment hotline. They connected me to the police department. Nothing added up. And eventually she admitted that she made up the police officer story, but that was the only part of the story that she made up. And it was just to kind of appease us, her friends, and make us believe that she was actually taking action when she wasn't. I do remember at that time asking her what the deal was with the hate accounts, that I told her I had to assume that she was behind the hate accounts. She was offended that I would think so. I asked her about Ben and his death, and was that real? Is he real? She was offended that I was questioning that. And so I kind of did come to this understanding with her that I believe you that Ben is real. I do believe you that he actually died. I don't want to press too much on something so sensitive as that, but you have to understand that I am operating under the assumption that you are behind these hate accounts. And you just have to grant me that. It's kind of at that point where it's like you've made up not just a lie about calling a police department, but you fabricated an entire story, an entire email with very specific details. I cannot trust your word. So she told me that in order to prove that this hate account was not her, that we would get on a 3-way call or a FaceTime call later in the evening and file an actual police report against this person. During that time, I went back into conversation with Sarah and Christina to see if there were more answers we could get around this story. So as it turns out, in the state where Cami lives, really police reports, including traffic accidents and all of that are public information. So you can call that county and find out whether or not somebody was involved in an accident at that time by a certain name, if they died, etc. So when I spoke to Sarah and Christina, they said that they had called the county that they thought Cami was in, and the police department there had nobody by that name, by the name of Ben with his last name, involved in an accident around that time. I found out that they were actually calling the wrong county's police department. So I was on hold with them over FaceTime as one of them called the proper police department to see if Ben had actually died in that county around that time in a pedestrian traffic accident. While we were on hold for about half an hour, we talked about where Ben is in Cami's socials, and I just thought, why not? I went ahead and requested this person who I thought was deceased, and right away I was approved. The request was approved. So I sent him a message. I don't really want to put these messages on the screen because I want to be able to hide his identity as much as possible. I sent him a message that said, "Hey, it's Alicia, can we talk?" To which Ben said, "About?" And I said, "This is Ben, right? Do you know Cami? I recently met her." And he said, "Yeah, we were friends in college." I said, "I'm going to sound like a crazy person, so I apologize up front, but I'm afraid she may be lying to me about a lot of serious things." He said, "Like?" And I said, "Well, for one, she said you were engaged and that when she visited me a couple of weekends ago, you traveled to where she lives to get her back. And while she was here, we were told you committed suicide," and blamed her. He said, "I've never been to that city where she lives." And he said, "And we were never together." I said, "God, I feel like an idiot. I am sorry to bother you. Thank you for clearing that up." So at this time, I wasn't sure what to do, but I decided that I was going to stop trying to prove or disprove anything Cami was saying and just assume that everything that she said to me was a lie. Just operate under that assumption. When she reached out to me about filing this police report on a 3-way call, I said, "You know what? Forget it. I don't need any of that." And then went into the weekend and really hoped that I could take some time to kind of disconnect from the internet. I was going to spend some time visiting with my boyfriend and just get offline a little bit and try to process this and not be so stressed out. Over the course of the weekend, a few things happened. Amberin did speak on the phone with Cami and really kind of questioned her about a lot of these details. I then got on the phone with Cami a little bit later and really just kind of, I really expressed to her the weight of her actions on me and all of our friends, how much she'd hurt us, and just how much damage she'd caused. And I did speak to Ben a little bit more at length early this week as he reached out to me to ask more questions about these lies that were told. And he did express to me that he knew Cami to kind of make up stories sometimes, but nothing to this extent. He seemed a bit jarred, but I did kind of tell him everything that she told me because I felt he deserved to know. But other than that, like I said, I was taking time to try to process this, but then that brings us to how I felt like I was unfairly pressured to tell this story by an anonymous troll, and how I believe I know who this person is. So that weekend, or around that weekend that this information came about, some troll accounts popped up on both my Discord server, as well as the Guru Gossip Discord server that I was a member of, that Cami was a member of for a very brief period, but we both left, and that these friends, Sarah and Christina, were also members of. So this troll account popped up on that server as well as my server, And there was a troll account by the name of Emily with a bunch of numbers that popped up on Twitter. And both of these accounts were saying the same thing. Like, Alicia's a liar, Cami's a liar, Alicia's covering up for Cami, hashtag Alicia tell the truth. Other things too, like Ambran's a liar, Alicia's a liar, Jen's a liar. I don't remember if they said Jesse and Alex are liars. Gabby's shit too. Everybody's shit. Get Alicia to tell the truth. And for what it's worth, we know that these two accounts are linked because not only were they saying the same things with the same hashtag that is not even like a real hashtag, but also in looking at the recovery email address, it looks like it is likely Tough Biscuit something, which is the name of the troll account on the Discord servers. Tough Biscuit there, Emily on Twitter. So this person was constantly and consistently harassing me, calling me a liar, and pressuring me to tell this story. A lot of people came to my defense, came to Cami's defense, but this still incited a lot of worry and concern and question in a lot of people. In addition to calling me a liar, she called me a bad person. She referred to anyone else sticking up for me or anybody in my camp. She called them f***ing sheep and gave away details that only somebody close to the situation would know. So at one point, Emily said, if you don't believe me, then why don't you ask why she and Camila aren't friends anymore? And that's not something the public had known about. So where we thought that this person could be a troll, we thought, well, this has to be somebody close to the situation, so we assumed it was Cami. Oh, and this other person said something that I was just another one like Gabby, so sounds like it was meant to be an insult. So it was on Tuesday of this week that I approached Cami about the Emily account. I referred to her as Emily. I insisted that she must know what I'm talking about, that she must be behind the Emily account. And this is where she did get very adamant that she was absolutely not this person. She would do anything that we needed to prove that this account was not her. And she even got back on her Twitter account, which she hadn't been on in a couple of months, to try to go to bat for me and to defend me against this Emily person. And there was just, around that time, I guess I started to wonder if in fact this person was Cami or if it could perhaps be somebody else. It did occur to me that while the other hate accounts never really targeted me, they really only targeted Cami. They didn't ever really say anything all that bad about me. This account was singling me out and saying really pretty mean and negative things about me. So that seemed a little off. And so I talked to a couple of my close friends in the Big Six and said, hey, is it possible that this account could be somebody that we know, somebody who is close enough to the situation to know these details, to know that we're not friends with Cami anymore, etc. And so this is where we started to break down and narrow down the possibilities to this one person that, again, I feel definitively is behind the Emily and Tough Biscuits account. So initially, like I said, we found that this troll had information that only a select few, about a dozen people, knew. There was the Big Six. There were a couple of public figures that were close to us that were affected by what was going on. There were Sarah and Christina. And then later in the weekend, I agreed to clue in a few more people from a mutual server between me and Sarah and Christina. I would go ahead and tell them, update them what was going on, so there wasn't weird tension within their server around the Cami situation, as some people were in support of and some people were not in support of Cami. So there were only so many people that knew. And we looked at the activity of these accounts, and while Emily and Tough Biscuit were speaking up around, I think, Friday night and Saturday night, the Tough Biscuit account was actually in my Discord server that Thursday night, which was the night before I learned anything about these lies. And therefore the night before any of the Big Six knew anything about these lies, and the night before Cami knew that we knew about these lies. So that really boiled down the possibility to likely either Christina or Sarah, because as this was before I knew of anything, it was also before we told those other people what happened. So it really came down to Christina and Sarah. And still the slight possibility that it was Cami, somehow outing herself before any of us knew that these were lies. So we looked at a couple more details. We looked at the device that Emily was tweeting from, and it was from an Android phone, where Sarah and Cami both have iPhones and tweet from iPhones. And once we boiled it down to this, where I thought that where I believed that this person was Christina, I spoke in a private channel where we were talking about the situation, where I had about those, 10 to 12 people. And I said to everyone, hey, more or less, I'm going to be restricting access to this channel. We're not going to be allowing any more people in here, and I'm not going to be sharing any more information, as we do firmly believe that the troll that is both Tough Biscuit and Emily is in this channel. We feel very strongly that it is someone here. I believe that I know who it is. I've narrowed it down to a couple of options, and so I won't be saying anything else about the situation here. During that time, nobody else seemed to be reacting in any big way. I got some support from a few people, including Sarah, but it was Christina who started to act very erratic. At that time, she left my server and she left a Twitter group chat that we were in together, where there was about 15 or so people, just kind of seemingly out of nowhere. Then she began to express a lot of guilt to her other friends in a very upsetting voice memo and just in messages with people. She was expressing a lot of guilt. At times she was saying that she felt guilty even though she's not this person. I think at some point said that she was like questioning her own sanity. She then at a couple of points said that she felt guilty because maybe she had just spilled the beans to too many people and that I wasn't aware of it, and so she felt guilty. She reached out to me to express that, hey, I did tell a couple more people than we thought about this situation. And I did say, hey, like, I'm not mad at you for spilling the beans to a couple of people. Like, I'm not going to be upset with you over that, but we do already know who it is, and it is somebody in this channel. So don't worry about that. In my opinion, if you're not guilty and your worry was that it was somebody that you told this information to, and I said, no, it definitely is not. It's somebody within this channel. If that were me, I would feel, absolved of any guilt or suspicion. So a lot of this erratic behavior continued. I believe she left her own server at some point. She did tell me that she meant to leave that channel, not the entire server, and she wanted to be invited back. At which point I decided I needed to approach her with the additional information we had, which was, once we had narrowed down the Emily account to either Sarah or Christina, we looked at kind of the behavior around both of these women over the weekend. I wasn't very active on Discord, but I was told by several people that Christina was very adamant about how I needed to get the Cami story out right away, that I needed to tell everybody what was happening. She also seemed very adamant about us sharing this information with more and more people. She continued to ask, can we share this with so-and-so? Can we let so-and-so in this channel? Can we tell so-and-so about this? And she seemed, according to a couple of my friends, very kind of distressed over the fact that I was not very active on Discord over the weekend. Like I said, I was spending time with my boyfriend. I was trying to unplug from the situation while I processed it. But she seemed really distressed by the fact that I was not active in Discord and that I was not telling people what was happening with Cami. That was enough to make all of us kind of deduce, this is Christina that's behind these accounts. But what was kind of the nail in the coffin, and really the only proof or evidence that we needed, forgetting everything that I just said, one of my mods went back and found an audit log for our Discord server. And we found that although the Tough Biscuit account spoke up in our Discord server, I think that Saturday night, we found that our welcome bot welcomed this account to the server on Thursday night, which I may have already mentioned, but this bot or this account entered our server Thursday night before any of us besides Christina and Sarah knew about the situation. But further, one of my mods looked into, like I said, our audit log and found that Christina had been creating invites to our server, which was a setting that we should have changed, but still, in my opinion, she had no business creating invites to my server as it was connected to my Patreon. Not only was she the only person creating invites aside from me and one of my mods, but she created 2 invites exactly 3 and 5 minutes prior to the Tough Biscuit account being welcomed to my server. So here you can see a 3-minute difference between those invites being created and this account being welcomed on my server. And for me, that is enough. I can't imagine anybody else involved in this situation being able to grant this access to this person. And at this point, I feel like I'm over-explaining. It's Christina. It is Christina that did this, that was behind this account. And in addition to all of this, I would never hold this against her on its own, but she did express to us that the reason she knew that Cami was lying about these things is because she has done the exact same thing that Cami did. And so that every step of the way, every lie that Cami told, she told us. It was like looking into a mirror. These are behaviors that I have a history of. So at that point, with her asking to be let back onto my server, I thought, you know what? I've just got to approach this person. And I didn't want to. I wanted to initially leave it at just that channel, letting people know that, like, hey, I know somebody's here. They're pressuring me to do this. I'm going to go ahead and make this video, but can we please make the Emily account stop? But it was at this point that I was getting continually getting messages from Christina, as well as my friends, and being asked, can I be let back into the server, that I had to approach her and tell her that I wasn't comfortable with her coming back, that I would be refunding her the month that she paid for my Patreon and releasing her from the Discord, which actually she released herself, but I would not be inviting her back. So, and that conversation, though, at first she just initially was just sorry. The responses were kind of sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Jen Dent did ask her in a group chat why she did it. And at that point, she did say, I didn't do it, Jen. And I pressed a little further. And I did say, well, actually, Christina, you did do this. And here are the things that I have that show that you did this. But I made it very clear to her, I don't want any beef with you. I don't want to fight over this. And honestly, it's not just out of the goodness of my heart. It is because I'm afraid of what's going to happen if I do have beef with you. I'm afraid of the repercussions. I've already been in enough shit over the past couple of months in dealing with people around this situation that I don't want any trouble. And from there, she gaslit me. She said that my proof was bullshit. She said that I was a coward for talking about her without allowing her to be present to defend herself, which I think is bullshit because we had just gone through this process with Cami. And I made that parallel to her. I was like, I am bringing forward proof and evidence to you the same way we did in the Cami situation. And she told me that it was unfair to compare the two and that I should grant her some of the same trust and compassion that I granted to Cami before I knew Cami was a liar. That I should grant that to her. And it just, I got to a point where I got sick of the conversation. I got sick of how crazy she was making me feel. And I ended up blocking her. And that's where we are. As far as I know, she's kind of removed herself from the internet a good bit. I did tell her before all of this, now that I think about it, I said, I don't want any problems with you. If you decide that you need to change your usernames on social media, I'm not going to out that information. I don't want to send hate your way. And that is something that I want to make very clear. I don't want any hate sent to this person if you find out who it is or whatever, and I certainly do not want any hate sent to Cami. I want hate sent to no one. I am simply telling you guys what's been going on because I think that you deserve to know what's been going on, because a lot of you have become emotionally invested in this situation, as I have too. While I have been deeply, deeply hurt by Cami and her lies and the trauma of the 911 situation and thinking that I was witness to from afar a suicide. Obviously, you guys, all of this was really traumatizing for me, and it was an awful thing for her to put me through. She has since expressed gratitude for my friendship while it was there and guilt for the lies that she's told. And at this point, I would just like to give her the space that she needs to go get the help that she needs. That is the only thing I've asked of her. Yes, I've been very upset with her, and I'll be honest with you. The moment that this situation happened with Christina, I stopped feeling angry at Cami. And I told my friends, and I think I told Cami and Christina this, that I frankly felt like I deserved more time to be upset with Cami. But because of this situation, I kind of shifted my focus to Christina. So to Cami, I just really hope that you find the help that you need. I do believe you when you say that you have been seeking that and that you will continue to seek that. I really hope that we can cross paths one day and hear that you are doing so much better. But I expressed to her that she cannot expect to repair any of the friendships that she's built around me and my friends, that we are not only too hurt, but that the trust is no longer there. She seems to understand that, and all of us, from me and the big six, all we want is for her to go and get the help she needs and really give us the space we need to kind of repair on our own. As for Christina, don't want any sent her way, because I could tell that she has been tortured by this situation since I was on her trail earlier this week. And I'm sure that sucks enough as it is. But I will say to you, who I'm calling Christina, you forced my hand. You gaslit me. You put me in this situation where I had to tell this story in such a way that I am not ready to do. And so I don't know how this is going to play out for me. I don't know how I'm going to be dealing with this moving forward, but I will say that I am just going to do my best, like I said earlier, to separate myself from the people that are tied to this community where all of this has started from. I do not want to blame them for what these specific individuals have done. I do think that both of those people have reflected poorly on this community. I think that community reflects poorly on itself as it is. But I'm going to make sure that I take the time that if and when I do speak on this community in the future, that it is not impacted by lies told to me or any of my friends or acquaintances by these people who have shown me that they lack the capacity to be truthful around these situations and have, quite frankly, betrayed my trust. So again, please, if you can, please be understanding, please be respectful. I am sorry to any of you who got emotionally invested in the Cami story along with me and felt any type of way that now you feel betrayed or embarrassed or anything that I might be feeling. But please allow these people the space to learn from their mistakes and grow. There's no need for us to spread any more hate than has already come into and out of this situation. I just want us all to start to heal. So that is what I wish for you. I hope you'll wish the same for me, and I will give you guys an update if I have any. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.